I am Bilal Morris, and this is Belizean Legends. As Belizeans, we have a great history of achievement. We are fortunate to witness some magnificent athletic performances. We've been privileged to enjoy great musical concerts from extraordinary musical artists. As a nation, we have struggled politically, but also made great progress. Culturally, we continue to evolve as a society. Where were you when some of these incredible moments occurred? Belizean Legends will transcend you back into time to relive some of these spectacular events and offer some behind-the-scenes perspective on the untold stories, as well as updating you on the individual lives featured in this series.
Today we are speaking with Deborah Theus-Sanchez, and one of the legendary Belizean softball players. And she's also from the gold medal team, the 1974 Central American and Caribbean Games gold medal team. And Deborah, your work as a softball player has been documented as one of the incredible players, both in batting, in catching, and I think that from my research that you are also a very good utility player. Deborah, the first thing I would like to ask you is to give us a brief history of your softball career. How did you start playing softball, and how did it all started for you?
Well, when I was about 13 years old, I was attending Nazarene High School, and I used to pass by the field behind the youth hostel, and it was a team rehearsing over there, and I just stopped one day and I said, "How do you get to join this team?" And they told me, "Just come out to practice." So as excited as I was, I've always loved softball. I used to play it as a little girl back in San Ignacio where I live. So I went and joined the team, and that was the Guinness softball team.
Deborah, we were talking also about how you started your softball career and coming out of San Ignacio and playing ball. Did you start playing for high school, or did you go straight into playing ball at Rogers Stadium and joining the other teams like Guinness and so on?
Well, when I first started playing softball, I was really in San Ignacio, but just going out to the field, rehearsing with the people that were there. And then when I moved to Belize City to go to high school, at that time, softball was not prevalent in the high schools. So I happened to start the Guinness team before I actually joined the team from Nazarene High. And then after about a year or so, they started softball in the high schools. And then I was able to participate in high school softball. But I was already on the Guinness team when I played softball with the high school.
Okay, so you started playing for the Guinness team. So you started playing what you would say professionally first, before you even start playing on your high school team.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful way to work. Who are the coaches that really got you into softball? Were you inspired by any past players of the past, like that played softball, or is it one of the coaches that had got you into softball?
I think I just love softball, but I did have a few people that helped me to play like softball more. Like I can say Carrots used to love the way he used to teach us and play softball. Also Mr. Hyde, he was very instrumental in helping us with the team when I was on Guinness. And we also had later on Mr. Humes, Bobby.
Yes.
He helped us. He helped me a lot with the softball team. And basically the players like Noreen Budden and Genevieve Jenkins.
Okay, very good. The 1974 Central American and Caribbean Games was an epic time in Belizean sports history. It is the time where Belize performed at its best when, for the very first time, the country won a gold medal through the softball players at the Central American and Caribbean Games. Tell us about that moment that became a very highlight time for Belizeans in Belize. Tell us about the game and the return from the victory, winning the Central American and Caribbean Games, winning the gold medal in the Central American and Caribbean Games.
Well, the build-up was exciting. Just going to the games, the 12 Central American and Caribbean Games, we were elated, really. Everybody was so excited to go. We had a good rapport among ourselves. And we went there to really try to do our best, not knowing that we would have came out as victorious as we did. But because everybody just loved the team, we all listened to Mr. Lashley, whatever he said to do, we all tried to do whatever it was that he said we were supposed to do. And we just tried our best during that time. And we saw that these teams that were out there playing at that time were basically on the same level like we were, even though we came from Little Belize, but we could compete with them because from the way we played and the way they played, we started winning games.
Yes, very much so. The other players in the past, like Consuelo Dugal, the 1969 players that we remember, being that you were a player from the 74 team, that you came in after those players, how did players like Consuelo Dugal influence you in softball?
Well, when I was growing up, I just heard her name, softball, Consuelo Dugal. And I just loved the way she pitched. I loved the way she threw that ball and how outstanding she was when she was doing it. And I never really played when she was playing, but I used to go look at the games when she was playing. So I have an experience of her playing softball.
Yes. Your softball high school career, or your softball, you played for tournaments during your softball in your high school life. Tell us about those games that you played for your high school.
I would play almost every game. We would play at MCC grounds, or we would play sometimes, I think, at Rogers Stadium. But whatever the games were, I gave it my all. I would stretch out across that field. At the time, I used to play in high school. I was major shortstop, so that was my position. I was in shortstop during the high school games for my team, and that's where I played. And I would try to get all those balls. I would dive to the ground, try to catch everything that was just coming my way, just so we can have a good team and a good game.
You were a very athletic player at that time.
Yes.
You knew that softball, you had the ability to play this game. Yes. The competitions at Rogers Stadium, you played for what team? Guineas. Tell us about some of those competitions at Rogers Stadium, because many people remember those great games that was played there, even before the games moved to MCC grounds. But tell us about the Rogers Stadium highlights.
Well, at Rogers Stadium, we had competitions between like Lyolans at the time, Millport or Hoover, or I don't quite remember any other teams, or even the teams from the villages or out district. But I think what we did was we supported each other. We could cheer each other on and encourage each other. Hey, come on, you got to get this person out, or you got to do this, to make the team, feel like everybody got to make an effort to make it a team sport. And so we all helped to try and make it successful.
So, the outstanding legendary player, Mr. Solis, who passed away and was also inducted into the Softball Hall of Fame, and the other legendary player, Raymond Lashley, coach, that is, Raymond Lashley, stand out as two of the most outstanding coaches in Belizean softball history and Belizean sports history on a whole. How did those two coaches influence you in your softball career?
Mr. Lashley is a very strong-minded person. He knows what he wants his players to do. He is also a person that puts his heart into the game, and he gives it his all, and that transforms to the players. So whenever I had the opportunity of being under him when he was coaching the national teams, and most of the time when I was with him with the national teams, you just had to follow and try and understand what he was trying to tell you, whether it be hitting, running, outfield, infield, and just try and understand what he was saying and make the game a success.
The highlights of the MCC grounds, the games of 1969 playing in the amateurs Caribbean softball tournaments, where Belize would win over Jamaica and would have opponents like Bermuda and Bahamas and the Virgin Islands and Miami, were highlights of MCC grounds. The legendary softball announcer or radio announcer, sports announcer CLB Rogers used to bring those highlights. How many games did you play, or what did you ever play at the MCC grounds in some of these tournaments? Tell us about the highlights there.
It was the Herman's Ferry Trophy that we played for with the Caribbean Games, and I had the opportunity to play the games with Bermuda and Jamaica and Puerto Rico. We had the opportunity to play those games, and I can remember the last night we played when the game was supposed to, I can't remember if we won that game or if we lost that game, but I remember in my career and in my mind somebody gave a hit, and it was a sure hit coming through second base, and I was a second base person, and I just did everything that I could have to just reach for that ball and catch that ball and made it out. And that's one of the highlights of my career as a softball player, in those games, to make the team successful.
Also, too, we remember the Central American and Caribbean Games. Apart from the 1974 games that you guys won the gold medal in, you also participated in other Central. Did you play in other Central American and Caribbean games after that?
I don't remember, or I don't quite remember if I went to any other Central American and Caribbean games. I know we went to El Salvador, where that was what was those games in El Salvador when we had a run against the United States of America.
So you were also a part of that 1979 team that also played that in the Pan American Games. Yes,
I was a part of that team, and I could remember that day. Every time America came to play a team, nobody got a run. Nobody was able to get not even one run against the American team. And I could remember that one of our team members was able to get to third base, and I hear Mr. Lashley playing, "Ooh, I see a run, let's get it in. I see a run, let's get it in." And he used his strategy, and I don't quite remember what strategy he used, whether it was somebody hitting or button, but we did get that run against America, and nobody else was able to do that for that tournament.
Wonderful. So tell us about the pitching ace, Margaret Usher, in that game. I know that she was a serious factor in that she struck out a lot of the U.S. batters.
Margaret Usher was a very strong player. She performed excellently in her pitching and even in her fielding and batting. She was excellent in the way she performed and the way she tried to get those players out during that Pan American game, during those Pan American games that made us able to be a success there at those games.
How did you perform in the Pan American games at the time? Tell us about your role as a player in that game, because that was an epic game, a game that put Belize on the map as a great sports country. Tell us about the role that you, Deborah Theus-Sanchez, played during that in the 1979 Pan American Games.
During the 1979 Pan American Games, unfortunately, the team took too many members, and I was one of the members that weren't able to really play. I was just there to experience the games.
The coaches, Raymond Lashley and And Solis played a tremendous role in developing the athletes of the time. How did those two coaches influence you as a player?
Mr. Solis and Mr. Lashley were great coaches. They offered you good advice, and they offered you the opportunity to be able to be good softball players with the techniques and different ways they showed you in which you were supposed to play softball with your teammates. They also encourage us to have a good rapport among each other so that we can be friends with each other, so that we can better make the team a success.
In the 1974 Central American and Caribbean Games, Linda Lewis led the team as a pitcher during that time. Tell us about the work that she did on the mound at that time in that game where you guys won that gold medal for the very first time for Belize.
Excellent work. Linda Lewis displays a workmanship that like no other. She would rehearse days and hours, and she would put her entire self into the game, and she would want to make sure that she's throwing strikes. And to achieve those things, she just rehearsed real hard. Like I was saying, Linda Lewis was an excellent softball player. She tried to achieve all the things that she should achieve during softball. We had very seldom days when we would have to take her off from pitching. She would carry the entire game, and even if she had an off day, she knew how to bring herself back so that we can achieve what we were supposed to achieve. As long as the team was behind her and we were fielding and catching, she was able to perform the job. She did a good job.
We also saw the role that players like Elaine Smith and the other players from the 1974 team that was also participants in that game that helped drive Belize to that victory. How did those players perform, and along with yourself, because there was a team effort there? Linda Lewis was the pitcher on the mound that led the team, but overall, how did the other players, including yourself, what was the strategy in winning that game at that time? I think you beat Puerto Rico, right?
Yes.
For the gold medal.
Yeah. The strategy behind the game was just to concentrate and work hard. If you batting, you need to concentrate on making sure you're getting a hit. And step by step, we went ahead and we did that. The pitching was, when the pitcher was on the mound, step by step, let's get one person out at a time. And once we did that and we concentrated and the team rallied behind us, if the pitcher was doing good and the catcher was doing good and teammates were catching the ball, we were all excited together and were able to achieve that.
That also brings us to the discipline that players like you all had at the time that you don't see in these new players in Belize today. They don't have the kind of discipline, the kind of team effort that you talk about there, Deborah, is what made Belize a force to be reckoned with at that time. You talk about the collaboration that you guys played with, the following the lead of your pitcher Linda Lewis in that game. How did you all develop that kind of discipline in Belize itself? Because I know in the inter-district competitions that you guys were playing in, that you all were playing at the time, and the kind of work that the coaches got you guys involved with, how did you all develop that kind of discipline?
Well, I think basically it was just the love of softball. Each of us had our own chores. Each of us had our own jobs. If it wasn't going to school, it was going to work. But whenever work was over, if some of us packed the uniforms, came straight from the job, changed clothes, and did practice, and some of us, if we had to go home, like if I'm coming home from school and I know I have to go to practice, I run. I used to go to Nazarene School and Princess Margaret Drive, and we practiced at Rogers Stadium or behind Youth Hostel. it would be a good run to run from Nazarene High School to my house behind Yabra, change my clothes,
Program started
and run
all the way
to
there.
practice. Yes. So that was something that we did. And like, say for instance, sometimes we have to have a game to play and we know somebody's going to work late and we know that person would tell us ahead of time. We didn't have phones, but we would try to keep each other informed ahead of time. I'm probably going to be late. We would be on that fence at Rogers Stadium looking to see, they're coming down the street. It's almost out. Hurry. We would be telling each other, it was just the love of the game really that kept us together, and we all wanted to do it. It's not something that we lackadaisically did, like I was in Belize recently, and it would say side in and side out, and then the girls would just calmly walk on the field. Irritated me because I know when we said side in, side out, run out there and run back in, things like that, we would do automatically without, having any pressure on us to do that.
Immediately you saw that passion for the game right there. Today you see them like they don't really want to go. They don't move. They're not too motivated by it at all.
It's like they don't really want to play.
And it tells a lot about that period of time that was so great. But also you all had a country that was behind you. Your parents, the people, fans, friends. Tell us about that home crowd advantage that you had with Jamaica and all of them would come to Belize and play at the MCC ground.
Yes, we that was something that the whole country looked forward to. I believe it was something that softball at the time was the only game or team that really stood out to that extent where they would bring home a gold medal or have foreign players come to play. And so the whole team, the whole Belize just rallied behind us. We didn't expect to have all that big support when we came back from the gold medal team and we had that parade out there. It was all Belize lined the streets, and we were just so elated coming from the airport to see all this was happening, because that's not something we were used to. But we were excited and grateful to know that we had the support of our country.
And finally, Deborah, we had a situation where our government also, the government of the day, the Minister of Sports at that time, Said Musa, was a very passionate minister that supported you guys. We see highlights of when you guys returned from Santo Domingo with the gold medal, the effort that was put into making sure that you guys had a great welcome, right? What was that like in terms of supporting government support of its countrywomen in sports at that time? What was it from your perspective?
It was a wonderful thing to see, to know that the country was really behind us, that whatever efforts we put forward to go to those games and to come back successfully, that it was appreciated, not only by the fans that we had, but also by the government officials as well. It was something that we all appreciated at the time.
And finally, what message would you like to leave with those young players of today? What would Deborah Theus-Sanchez, as one of the legendary softball players of the gold medal team, what message would you have for those players and for the Belizean people as a whole?
I would say to the players, you have to love the sport. You have to give a certain amount of commitment to the sport. You have to want to do it. If it's not something that you really want to do, then you should try and encourage somebody else that love the sport to do a good job of whatever it is, the sport that you're playing. Because without the love and the passion for the sport, you won't be as successful if you're not passionate about what you're doing.
And we've been speaking with Deborah Theus-Sanchez, one of the legendary Belizean softball players of the 1974 gold medal team that won gold for Belize in the Central American and Caribbean Games. And Deborah, we want to thank you very much for coming in and giving us this interview for the documentary When We Were Queens.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate being here.